everyone, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through kind of a goals, kind of a TBR style video. Essentially, I'm going to be going through all the books I hope to reread in 2020. One thing I've honestly been pretty good about these past few years is rereading series either to give them a second try or to just kind of reintroduce myself with their world and continue on with the rest of the books that are out. I have honestly loved doing this for a variety of reasons. It's just kind of like made me fall back in love with so many amazing series, but also just love series I already know I really like. I know it's already mid-February, but this is something I've already kind of been unconsciously doing throughout this year. So I figured why not make it official and go through a TBR of all the books I hope to reread throughout the rest of this year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This is a series I have not read since middle school. I've obviously seen the movies and all of that shenanigans, but with the new book coming out in this series, I think it's a prequel. I'm actually not totally sure. I do feel like I need to give this series a reread before I can jump into that. Obviously, this is one of the most beloved dystopian YA trilogies out there. There's an incredible movie franchise. It was a whole movement when this came out, and I was a part of that. I loved it immensely. So I'm almost a little fearful of rereading this because I don't want to like hate something that I loved so much when I was growing up. That being said though, I actually have pretty like high expectations. I really do feel like this is gonna hold up as a story, and I'm pretty pumped for the next installment, so I'm curious to see how that is gonna play out, and I just want to make sure I'm prepared by reading this first one and the second and the third one before that occurs. Next book on my reread TBR is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Last year I reread the first 4 books of the Harry Potter series, and I just want to continue on with my reread trend. I've kind of taken a few months off, so I don't want to let too much more time slide between rereading these, and I do feel like this is just such a series that I love to pick up when I'm really stressed or feeling especially anxious. And the 5th one is actually my favorite one, I want to say, within all of the books. I'm really excited to reread this, and obviously like Harry Potter, big love in my life. And Millie. And the 5th illustrated edition of this doesn't come out until 2021, so I figured let's give this a reread and then I'll read it again in a year anyway. So, you know, this is also on my list. So basically like 2 childhood favorites I want to reread this year sometime. Next up is a reread I've actually already accomplished, and that is to read The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin, book 1 in the Inheritance trilogy. I've recently read this, and that means I also want to continue on with the rest of the trilogy because I have not read books 2 and 3. This was one of those rereads that I knew I was gonna likely enjoy it a lot more the second time around than when I first read it 5 or 6 years prior, and to confirm, that was definitely the case. But N.K. Jemisin is one of my all-time favorite fantasy writers. She just writes such captivating and fascinating stories, and this is her trilogy that basically is set in a world where there are a bunch of different kingdoms, perhaps 100,000, and they're basically all kind of controlled by one central family and one central power, and they live in this floating castle in the sky. And the reason why they're able to have such power is because they've actually enslaved gods, and they harness their power to control everyone else. Our main character in the beginning of this book is traveling to this kingdom to be one of the heirs, and she kind of has to fight to the death for this position. The reason why is she's actually the granddaughter of the current ruler, and her mother abdicated her position before she was born. So there's a lot of complex political dealings going on, combined with the fact that she's kind of colluding with these gods to set them free. Again, I reread the first one and I really enjoyed it. And I'm really curious to see how the rest of the series is going to expand in books 2 and 3. I honestly have no idea what to expect, which is kind of the best feeling in the entire world. So this is definitely something I'm going to marathon throughout the rest of this year, and really pumped that I've already reread this because it was exceptional. Next book I hope to reread is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Powell Preto. This is a book that I read last year and really remember enjoying a lot, but I think I just read it during a time where I was reading like 4 books at once. So a lot of the details are a little messy in my head, and the sequel is coming out very, very soon, and I really just feel like I want to reread this, get reestablished in the world before I pick up the sequel, just because I feel like this might be like a fave, but I just want to set it up for success upon, you know, encountering the second book. But this is essentially a YA fantasy world where we follow two sisters who have a very tumultuous relationship. And they're essentially a part of this once great and powerful kingdom, kind of ruled by warrior women who rode these phoenixes and were just essentially incredibly powerful. But eventually, of course, this kingdom was destroyed, and any woman kind of showing aptitude towards phoenix riding had to have gone into hiding. Her and her sister both kind of show these traits, and they are kind of always been on the run their whole life, and they're trying to find and hatch their own phoenix eggs because they want to still kind of seize their destiny. These sisters are very much at odds with each other. They have a very complicated relationship, and you see them kind of split paths and then re-meet in a very interesting way. It's a multi-perspective story. I really liked it the first time around, but I just really want to make sure I fully know and remember every single detail before jumping into the sequel. The sequel's also much longer, and I really feel like it's going to be even better than this first one, which I liked so much. So I just feel like I just am really, really excited about its release. So just want to give this a reread before I check that book out. Next book is a book I've also already read, and that is The Assassins Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Another fantasy book I read forever ago and just kind of sort of liked at the time and never really carried on with the rest of the series. But this year I have goals to read not just this book, which I've already read, but a bunch of other Robin Hobb novels within the Farseer trilogy and beyond. But this is a really classic setup of a fantasy world. You basically are following your main character Fitz, and in this first one it's really just about him growing up, kind of entering the kingdom and beginning his training as an assassin. And you kind of see him throughout his childhood, through his adolescence, through his early teenage years, kind of gain those skills, and also kind of just like see him meet and mingle with all sorts of other characters. You really fall in love with him. It's a really intriguing story, but I know books 2 and 3 are really going to open up with lots of politics and lots of drama. Again, this is a series that I feel like upon a second reading I enjoyed more, but I've also just simply read a lot more fantasy between now and then, so I feel like I have a greater appreciation to kind of the setup that this book provided that I might not have when I initially read it so many years ago. But yeah, this is on my list. I've already completed it, I've already read it, but nonetheless, must include it. Next book on my list is Finnegan of the Rock by Melina Marchetta. This is a YA trilogy I read ages upon ages ago and loved so much. It was so fundamental to like my early booktube channel and my early like perspective on what makes good YA fantasy. I think about this series all the time, but it's been a really long time since I've read it, so I figured I should really give this another chance and I should really check it out. This is a trilogy that kind of focuses on different main characters in each one, but they're all very much connected, and often actually a lot of time can pass, especially between books 1 and 2. But this is set in a fantasy world where there is multi-kingdom conflict that has existed for a long time. In this first novel, we follow Finnegan, who is the son of a general, and in his childhood, his kingdom was basically defeated, and all of the residents that once lived in this land have become refugees and they've scattered to other lands. And in this first novel, he's basically trying to bring all these people home and also try to find the lost prince to kind of bring and unite all of his people again. It's a super amazing novel. It has sweeping and deep character connections, from romance to friendship, hate to love, like all sorts of things. Like, it is such a study on like humanity. Melina Marchetta also has written a lot of highly praised contemporary novels, and I feel like she brings her character building super well into this YA fantasy trilogy. Regardless, all I'm trying to say is I really love this trilogy. I haven't read it in a long time, so I'm hopeful to kind of start the reread of this year. And the last book I'm gonna bring up is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This is a book I enjoyed a few years ago, and simply that there has been another book that has been released, and I think the third one is coming out this year. So I feel like to participate in the booktube community that is just non-stop talking about this series, I need to reread book 1 before I can read books 2, and then obviously book 3. But this is essentially like a contemporary meets fantasy novel following Simon and Baz, who are a part of this wizard school. It's basically like Rainbow Rowell's take on Harry Potter fan fiction, but it's like a real story, and it's basically unpacking like the chosen one tropes, and it's like there's romance, there's love between these two boys, there's angst between these two boys, there's mystery and magic and adventure. I remember being a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm gonna fly through this and really like it for a second time, and I really want to read books 2 and 3, because I hear book 2 is rather like divided. People are very divided on it, so I want to see where I stand. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I hope to reread in 2020. Let me know down below some books you hope to reread this year, as I would love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!